Report from the Resolutions Committee. So we got to keep this rolling, so let's refrain from repeating statements, piling on. If someone says something you like, just say, yeah, me too, or whatever, but let's just, we got a very limited amount of time to get through this. This is a little exceptional for us. Usually we can talk about these things because we only have 2 or 3 resolutions, 19 this year. So, Clarence?
Okay. Everyone received the, in your packet, the Resolutions Committee report that shows all the resolutions where they've been sent back to the board for them to modify it, or at the committee's suggestion. The modified version that they fixed is back, and that's what you have in your packet, just as a point of information. We do these one at a time, but we'll try to go through them very quickly. Number 1 is the Burlington resolution on cost containment, and just to highlight, the committee said to pass the resolution, and the committee received a very similar resolution from Stowe. Given that we have 18 resolutions to consider merging these two, Stowe withdrew theirs, so we won't have a number 13. So this resolution is recommended to pass. I don't know how the board wants to handle this, one at a time, or adopt the whole report at the end.
I think my recommendation would be go one at a time.
I'm going to make a motion that we pass proposal number 1.
Would you make motions, please say your name so I can't
So
hear
we
you.
got Dan with the motion. Mary Kate?
Mary Kate, second.
We've got a second on that. Any discussion on this? All right, seeing none. All those in favor of passing this resolution are voting to present this with a recommendation to pass. Thank you. That was very difficult. Please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? All right, Clarence?
Number 2 is military discretionary budget be redirected to support tech ed. The committee said do not pass, and it's due to the challenges associated with VSBA advocating for federal funds. The committee favors the sentiment of the resolution and wonders whether it could be connected representatives of Burlington from our counterparts of the National School Boards Association to determine whether this issue is covered by the NSBA current federal advocacy efforts.
I'll make a motion, Celeste, to not to recommend this.
Do you have a second on that?
I'll second it.
A second from Don. So,
Recommend that it do not pass.
Oh, recommend that it do not
Recommend
pass.
it, so it's in the affirmative that
We agree with the committee's recommendation.
agree with the committee's recommendation. Let's do it that way from now on. Okay? Thank you. Any discussion on this? So it would be helpful if, for the record, if we had if we're going to vote to not approve a resolution, I think it would be helpful to have some bit of conversation as to why we didn't do it.
Well, I think there was a lot of support in our committee for career and technical education in Vermont, but this didn't appear to be in our jurisdiction as a state board, school boards. So.
I was at the meeting, and clearly the request to change the nation's defense spending budget was sort of a stretch.
Okay.
So Carrie didn't get the second.
I got the motion from Celeste.
Mary Kate
Mary Kate.
seconded.
Thank you.
Oh, no, Don seconded.
I
John,
second.
thank you.
So I'll say who does the first and the second, so you can get it. So
And
just
to
listen.
follow up
typing
on
what the
that,
motion is.
Yeah. Okay. Thank
I
you.
think it's important people understand, I don't know about other people, but I would have never voted against this if I felt it was something we could have an impact on within our jurisdiction. But to talk about the military at the federal level and tell them how you spend the money, I don't think that that's what we're here for.
Any further discussion? Given none, those in favor of the committee's recommendation to not pass this, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed to that?
I'm going to abstain, Dan MacArthur.
Dan MacArthur with an abstention. All right, so Clarence.
Number 3 is will be included annually in the VSBA negotiation training workshop. The committee says do not pass. The VSB reached out to the Vermont NEA in order for our BO bargaining process to work. Both parties need to agree on the approach. Unfortunately, we have examples in Vermont where both parties have an interest in bargaining framework at local levels. The training in those districts is available through federal mediation conciliatory services, and the VSBA connects board members with those resources upon request. You can't have participated negotiations if both sides aren't willing to participate, basically. We already support that where it's possible, but
Collaborative
Collaborative.
negotiations where both sides aren't being,
what
We
the
don't want to
initials
participate.
are here,
okay.
RBO.
I'll make a motion to approve the committee's recommendation
To do not pass.
to do not pass.
Do we have, that's Jim with the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Adrian Raymond.
Any discussion, any further discussion? Yes?
I'm not sure I understood what Clarence said. Did you say that y'all called the NEA? Is that,
I didn't,
you said that it didn't pass because, at least what I heard you say was that both sides have to agree to do this.
yeah,
And it sounds like we're saying, our side says we should do this, but I thought I heard you say the NEA says we're not going to? I'm not, because I don't quite understand the reasoning behind the do not pass.
in order for this kind of bargaining to work, both sides have to agree to it. At this point, there is no agreement in the state to do that. If a local board wants to negotiate and their local unit is willing to do this, there is a method that it can be used, and we refer them to the mediation service that provides mediation to do this, so they can do it. This resolution, I believe, if I'd have to go back, is mandating, wants us to do, everybody to do it that way.
Wants us to include it in the training is what I'm reading.
Yes.
It sounds like they're wanting to tell us how to do our negotiations.
Yes, and so we're saying, no, if you want to, you can, there's a way to do it, but it's not for everybody because we don't have an agreement from a partner to do that.
Celeste?
Regardless of whether or not the NEA agrees, I don't believe we need a resolution to add a training to our repertoire. And that's what it's asking us to do, is to train, to add this to our training. Add workshops on labor management models such as collaborative negotiation, collaborative bargaining.
So if a school district wanted this in our trainings, how would they go about doing it if it's not through a resolution?
The National Mediation Conciliatory Service provides a method for doing that, the training for doing that. They would train both sides on how to do it.
And I'm sure the VSBA
That's
can help you
available,
find that.
that's already available. What we
But
do,
through another organization?
Yeah.
Oh,
Not through the
I'm sorry.
VSBA.
I am dense, thank you.
We do not have the in-house expertise
Got
to
it.
do that, but
Got it.
I have referred districts in the past to the experts that do have that ability to work intensively with districts, because it is a pretty intensive process.
Any other discussion?
Thank you.
Okay, all those who want to vote to affirm the committee's do not pass platform statement on this, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? All right, it passes to do not pass.
all right, number 4 is show community unifying strategies and negotiations. The committee recommended do not pass. Negotiations is a two-party process. School boards do not have control over the dynamics of negotiations. Some committee members expressed that they could support this resolution, but the boards have no control over how the other side behaves. Perhaps this is a concept that we could explore with the Vermont NEA so that both sides are recognized for their collaborative work. The recommendation is do not pass.
I'll make that motion. Adrian Raymond.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Second from floor. Discussion?
I think one of the things that came up as well was the difficulty of, you say that we should commend certain boards, but what criteria would be used to determine which boards would be commended could get to be very difficult, frankly. It's,
Laura?
I agree, we can tell the story for each different community, it's not to us, but, how the communities work, we would be imposing something.
Celeste?
And again, we already have an award criteria to recognize highly functioning school boards, and it isn't specifically to only negotiation practices, but it's the high functioning of that board. We don't need a resolution to say, let's make a new award for recognizing school boards.
Mary Kay, you had your hand, did you want to say anything? Any other discussion?
I guess
Okay.
the only thing I would say, having been on that committee, is that as I read some of these initially, it looked like micromanaging the work of the VSBA.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, those who wish to vote, if you're going to vote affirmative, you're voting to back up the committee's recommendation to do not pass. All those in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain, Dan MacArthur.
Okay, Clarence?
Resolution number 5, VS, social service expense borne by school districts. The recommendation is committees to take no position. The resolution as it was presented had some questions about it, and they did resubmit some changes to it. Committee agrees with the sentiment of the resolution, respectfully requests the Burlington School Board to consider the following changes. Delete outside their core educational mission from the first whereas paragraph, and delete non-education from the second whereas paragraph, and change the language of the to it be it resolved paragraph. The committee suggested language be revised so that the VSBA supports a study in consideration of the costs associated with providing social services when making funding decisions and then setting ratios. They choose to, if you choose to submit the revised language, that we'll consider it. They did submit the revised language that we suggested.
I'm gonna make a motion that we change the position from take no position to recommend passing.
So I'm gonna change for a second how we're doing these, if that's okay with, let's just make a motion to pass and forget about what the committee decided. Let's just say we wanna pass this or don't wanna pass it, or because we don't have to go, this is just the committee's recommendation. We're not bound by what the committee has decided. So Dan, you're making a motion to
Pass this resolution.
pass this resolution.
As redrafted.
And I second that, Mary Kate.
Okay, Mary Kate with the second to that. Mary Kate, you have something to say?
Yeah, so I think when we sent it back to Burlington with requested changes, we didn't, as a committee, make a recommendation one way or the other in terms of pass or no pass. I think there was support among the committee for passing that, but we could, because the language hadn't been changed, we couldn't make a recommendation. So, but I think this is really an important issue. I think generally people felt supportive of that from the committee, and I think it's an important position for us to.
That's why we took no
recommend that.
position. They made the changes and now it becomes very, I
Right,
believe, very acceptable to the
We could take a position on
committee.
something that we didn't have the change language for, but I think the sentiment of the board is to pass it if they made the language change. I think it's important because we are finding so much more of our school board or our school funds services, the social emotional services, we want to have that recognized.
Laura, did you have something?
Yeah, so the resolution is just a guideline, even that we have passed, so this goes with things that we had been working before. So when we talk about like the human services, and we had been advocating back when I think Doug Racine was governor about how to better manage that, so I'm okay with whatever. I don't even feel that we necessarily had to change the language, it's something that we really should be advocating for.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion to pass this, to recommend this pass, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? Clarence?
Number 6, strike last year's VSBA resolution. 3, school districts innovation zones. The resolution committee recommends that do not pass this. Last year's innovation zone concept originated with Dan French, a former school superintendent and current school leadership coordinator at St. Michael's College, and since the writing of this, the new Commissioner of Education. He brought the innovation zone concept to the VSBA, VSA 7 years ago when we collaborated the development of an agenda for world-class education, and we put the link into them and where it comes. It did not come from the ALC, even though they have model legislation that uses the same term. This is not the national thing, it just happens to have the same name.
They took it from us.
Could be.
Change.
Sounds good.
We don't really know that.
I took a look at theirs. Theirs is very long and involved.
That's not what we're looking for.
It's not, it's a little different. Yeah.
Sounds like it's a lot different. Do we have, Clarence, anything more on that?
No.
I'll entertain a motion on this
I'll make a motion
to
to do not pass.
do not pass. So we have a motion do not pass from Floor.
I'll second that.
We've got a second from Jim. Further discussion?
I call the question.
Call the question? All right, stands for itself then?
What,
All right,
I mean, Clarence's comments will be part of the record, correct? I think that's.
okay, sufficient, very good. All those in favor of not passing this,
Don't you have to vote
recommend
on
not to pass it.
calling the question?
I'll withdraw my calling the question. You just looked like you needed help to move somehow.
I totally ignored Celeste most of the time. So those in favor of recommending that this do not pass, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed to that? Any abstentions?
Lorraine Childers.
That's an abstention?
That's an abstention?
All right,
Clarence?
resolution number 7 was withdrawn because it's the same as resolution number 8. And so now we'll deal with resolution number 8. Resolution number 8 is recommended do not pass. It's, oh, wait a minute, that's,
Good one, yeah, that's.
it's do not pass. The school board represents, teachers on school boards is what this is. This board represents all constituencies in the community in the VSB, not seek a designated spot on every school board for one specific constituency. It is not legal for teachers who work in the district to serve on a district board. Those who are teachers elsewhere and would like to serve on their local school board have the opportunity to run for office and be elected. Many teachers are currently elected to school boards. Members of the committee expressed interest in how the VSB may support boards and administrators adhering from all constituencies within the district, including teachers, but do not feel that this is an appropriate vehicle to do so.
Okay.
I think we also felt that the resolution as written in the whereas clause says that boards are composed of citizens who don't have direct involvement, experience, or training in teaching and learning practices. And we don't feel that, or I don't feel that it's the board of us, it's the job of us as school board members to dictate or have expertise in specifically in training and teaching and learning practices. That's not part of what we do. We don't dictate learning practices or teaching practices. So having that expertise, somebody with expertise on the board It really doesn't help us in what our job is.
Your thoughts?
Do we have a motion?
No motion.
I make the motion to approve the committee's recommendation.
Can we do it, can you just make a motion to do not pass?
Do not pass.
Okay, thank you. So we had Amy making a motion to do not pass, recommend this do not pass.
I'll second it.
So we have Celeste with the second. Any further discussion?
I think it just goes without saying for all these resolutions, and this one in particular, the information is in the packet where the complete resolution is there. If you want any more reference of what this is about, feel free to look that up, because of this meeting, the recording of this meeting will be made available to the membership if they want additional information on what's going on here.
Celeste?
I'd just like to add to Mary Kate's comment around insulting school board members for not being educated, but besides that, you didn't do that, I did. But besides that, I think it is inappropriate to push one constituency over another in regard to a public service board like the school board. Again, I think my comment was I'd really like to see construction workers and farmers on school boards. I think they have a tremendous amount to offer about practical, useful education. And this resolution to me speaks negatively about our boards.
Lou?
I also think it kind of diminishes the role of superintendent and principals play in our board meetings. If we're putting the onus on teachers who are supervised by those two people that do advise the boards, it creates kind of a odd type of arrangement.
Dan, you had your hand up?
I'm going to abstain from a number of these, and I just want to say, in some cases, I have some sympathy with what's being expressed here, but I also agree with the general feeling of this group that it wasn't correctly expressed or whatever. So that's by way of disclaimer for many of my abstentions.
Okay.
I just find it to be a direct conflict of interest to be on board overseeing a budget that's paying the individual sitting on the board. Feels like a direct conflict of interest, or is a direct conflict of interest.
Any other? All right, so I assume we're ready. Lori?
I feel like I'm hearing a theme of more collaboration, and I don't want us to miss that. I mean, I don't think there's a great way to do it because of all the things y'all have been talking about, but it's really important to understand that I think as leaders of the educational community, that teachers are a very important part of that community. I'm not sure their position is on the board,
Exactly.
right? But I it's just the theme, and I wanted to make sure, I wanted to name it.
Don?
I serve on a local board where, try once a month, but sometimes it's every other month. We have teachers from various groups that want to come, or departments, to educate the board on policies or maybe budget considerations. So I think there's a mechanism there if you want to take and collaborate, and if people want to be heard. And to have something where you say you've got to be. If I was going to have one person, it would be nurses on the board, because we deal with so many health-related issues. I'd love to have a nurse on our school.
All right, any other thoughts? All right, assume we're ready to vote then. Those in favor of the motion to recommend that this do not pass, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed to that? Any abstentions?
Okay.
Dan, an abstention. All right, let's move on, Clarence.
Number 9, the board recommends to pass this resolution. This basically is asking the VSBA to look at supervisory union boundaries with some of the mergers you wind up with a supervisory union, some school districts within a supervisory union in one VSBA region and some of them in another VSBA region. That's something that this organization can look at and work on internally. Thought it was a good idea, and we recommended passage.
I'll move to pass this resolution.
So we have a first,
That's Lori.
a motion from Lori. A second to that? Floor with the second. Any discussion?
If we have a Kingdom East, is there a Kingdom West somewhere in Vermont?
Nobody chose that name.
It's wide open, Don.
There is a north.
And you're a Westerner,
There is a
so
northeast kingdom.
you're the one to do it.
I
I just want to.
I thought they should
They
at
are
least-
the west side of the kingdom.
Here you go.
This is true.
I thought
I
they
didn't
should.
realize that the kingdom broke down by west and east itself.
Yes.
Because of them, they are the.
And you're the south part of the northeast.
I thought they should have at least had the courage to put their identity on it.
Yes.
Okay.
We did. We said we're the northeast.
All right, any
Newark, isn't that?
Any other thoughts about this? All right, those in favor of making the recommendation that this pass, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed to that? Any abstentions? Clarence?
Number 10. Find the right page. We took no position on the resolution. It was, VSBA educating board members. We took no position. The resolution submitted by the Marlboro Board, the committee respectfully requests the board consider resubmitting with the following changes: removing the second resolve paragraph, substantially, and encouraging them to develop and support creative innovations to educational practices. The Marlboro Board did change that and resubmitted, followed our recommendations. So we took no position until that was done, and it was done, so it's up to the board to take action as appropriate. You have a copy of the resolution in front of you.
So would it be fair to say that, given the conversation in the room during that committee hearing, that they probably would say yes?
With those changes, yes.
I would move passage, that we do pass this.
Okay, so we got a motion to pass this from John. Do we have a second?
I'll second Adrian Raymond.
All right, any further discussion on this?
I think there was also just some question, certainly in my mind anyway, as to whether or not this is anything new or this is already existing. So whether we're essentially, recruit and train, new school board members. But, if we already have it, then there's actually no reason to oppose it, certainly.
I think to a certain degree it reiterates our current position and says it's very important to, we have too many boards in the state where there are vacancies because people don't step forward to be board members. Anything that pushes to help push and encourage people to run for school boards and be involved, we need to be behind. And I believe that's the intent of the resolution, and that's what we're asking.
The reason I moved passage was that I have probably heard over the last 20-plus years on school boards, the VSBA doing this. I don't think it's a new idea. But with all these mergers through Act 46, I think we're bringing maybe some different people on, or we're bringing people on and are playing new roles. It's not quite the same. That's why I moved passage. It wasn't to say, you haven't done it, It's like, let's reaffirm that it's something we need to make a priority, so.
Kim, you had your hand up?
No, I think it's fine. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't directing us to prescribe curriculum in schools, but rather to sort of raise awareness to the civic responsibilities in our board training. I think it's fine.
Any other questions, comments? Floor.
I see it as retaking our vows, kind of, because it's the vision and the mission already of so I don't know if you could have a comment onto that, like it's part of our vision and mission, so it's good to be reminded, but I don't know how to express it, that is like our confirmation of that's our goal, but I don't want anybody to think that we're not doing that.
I have a
Lucas, go ahead.
I have a slight issue with the term recruiting. I think promoting in general, the idea of recruiting, sometimes we, as school board members, when we have an open position, we almost handpick somebody out of our inner circle. It sometimes shows a little negative light of what's the term you use when you you hire your friends and your family.
Nepotism?
Nepotism. It has that little feeling of nepotism as we recruit, but a general promotion of the value of being on a school board to the general public is something that I'd be very supportive of.
And it is something that so Susan put together a recruitment video last year that we distributed around the state, encouraging folks to run for office and giving more information about what it means to be on a school board. So it's certainly, that's how I would read it, that we would continue to do that level of activity, not going into communities
And I
and
don't
trying
want
to.
to wordsmith, so as long as that's clear that that's the intent.
Any other thoughts? All those in favor of voting that we recommend that this pass, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? Clarence?
Number 11, the recommendation is do not pass. The issue is school safety and security. From the Newark School Board, due to the current proposal could lead to districts authorizing and/or requiring teachers to carry weapons in school. We don't think that's a good headed for good public policy. That ought to be a state law or a federal law. It shouldn't be something that's left up to local school boards that they were start mandating their staff be armed. We don't think that's a good decision left to a local school board. We just don't think that's the way to do business.
I move we do not pass, that's Lori.
So we got Lori with the motion to do not pass.
Second.
We got Jim with the second. Sorry, he was a tad in front of you, Lucas. I'm watching this like a hawk. We got Jim with the second. Any more, hey Laura, come up join us. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of recommending that this do not pass, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstentions?
Celeste abstains.
Can I ask a question of Celeste?
Yes, sir.
Why did this come from the Newark School District and not Kingdom East?
Because she put it onto the computer before we discussed it as a Kingdom East board.
Okay.
And it was done at their very last meeting, so they were still technically a board. So it's their wording and their recommendation.
Okay, Clarence?
Kingdom East, Kingdom East.
12 is
They're the east of Kingdom East, yes.
concern the number of new legislative and educational initiatives and mandates from Rockingham. The Rockingham Board do not pass due to the concerns the proposal could prevent the VSBA from pursuing useful changes to educational laws and statutes. The VSBA is a current resolution in opposition to unfunded mandates and relies on this resolution in order to convey sentiments similar to what are conveyed by the Rockingham resolution. We also have a resolution calling for adequate staffing at the AOE to support current initiatives. As you can see from the list of current resolutions, and here, it's in our resolution book, we welcome a conversation with the Rockingham and the Wyndham Northeast Supervisor Union boards about how to ensure our advocacy efforts effectively convey these messages. Basically, we already have resolutions on this topic, and we don't think that we should be restricted from supporting a new initiative if we happen to think it's good for us. You know, it's the blanket's too wide, so we that's the reason for the do not pass endorsement.
I'll entertain a motion here.
Motion to not pass.
So we got Kim making a motion that we recommend this do not pass. Do we have a second to that?
I'll second it.
We've got Don with the second. Celeste?
I think that, especially in B resolved, it's really a very broad overreach. And having the VSBA tell the legislature and the governor what they can and can't do is kind of
I'll move that.
it's kind of a dream come true, but I just don't think we're in a position where we have the authority to tell the legislature, the governor, and the State Board of Education what they should be doing.
And that it would be a moratorium on new legislation,
Yeah.
which we want some legislation, you know.
What are we paying them for then?
Even some new legislation to repeal something they already passed stupidly last, you know.
Amen.
The thing, that had to happen with, I even forget what it
The
was.
allowable growth rates.
Allowable
and
growth.
Act 46.
Fiasco from a couple of years ago. We needed new legislation. This would prevent something, if this was adopted, prevent something like that.
Any further discussion? Lucas?
No.
No, then you can't, it's like, I'm like an auctioneer, you know? Just bet on the object. All those in favor of the recommendation do not pass, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Clarence?
Number 13 is the resolution from Stowe. It was withdrawn by the Stowe board because the Burlington number 1 took the place of it, same concept. 14 is the Taconic and Green on gun control. The recommendation is where it is.
Isn't there a separate handout on this one?
Yes.
Jim? Does everybody have that separate handout?
Addendum.
It was, okay.
We had a board meeting last night to approve the new form, so.
Okay.
The
So
resolution,
apologies for the late.
the resolution committee took no position on the resolution submitted to Tonic and Green. The committee discussed that this resolution may have trouble passing because it is so specific and because it is written before the major gun safety bills were passed this legislative season. The committee agreed that a broader safety resolution with mental health and reasonable gun control included could pass if the board chooses to resubmit revised language in order to respond to the feedback. Please do so by August 1st so we can be included in the packet for the VSBA meeting. That's what we told Tonic and Green. They contacted us and says we don't meet until last night. You know, I guess we can't do anything about it. So when I said, well, if you meet, if you want to do something and resubmit it, we'll take it. That's why that's an addendum to the report, and it's there. They did resubmit a resolution. Now this resolution is going to come up before the annual meeting. It's what this committee wants to choose about a recommendation. It comes to you without recommendation now.
I'm going to make a motion that we pass the addendum because of the revised changes. I agree with much of what people have said here tonight about overreach, calling on U.S. Congress.
Yeah, yep. Thank you. No, you're right. Let's get a second, Dan, and then we'll come back to you for your speech, buddy.
Yeah.
So we got Dan with the first to recommend that it pass.
I'll second it, it's Lori.
Lori with the second. Now, Dan, go ahead.
I agree about overreach. I mean, we have recommended not passing some other things which petition the federal government to do things, but in this case, I will make the motion that we approve as drafted, even though it means that we're asking the U.S. government to do something.
Approved with the amendment when you said as
Yes.
drafted.
Yeah,
We're talking about the
What's in front of us
The
now?
new form.
On the addendum.
The new one,
which they just
okay.
passed last
Just
night.
want to make sure that's clarified. Any other discussion? So this is coming from the committee with taking no position. Mary Kay?
We tried to significantly scale it back to, as Clarence said, it was, all drafted before all the legislation happened, et cetera. Actually even tried to make it clear that, there was appreciation for the legislation that was passed from the perspective of school safety.
I want to say thanks for doing it. Well, our board, we did the end of the time, but I appreciate you doing it. Thank you.
Neil?
I think I agree with the sentiment. The problem that I have is I'm not sure, how do we as an organization use this? I'm not sure what action steps VSBA takes based on this resolution.
I think one of the things that's going to happen, this goes before the membership, the annual meeting. This is going to be a reason that probably with the length of discussion and the people pro and con to this is going to mean that we miss half the reception.
And that means happy hour, folks.
All kidding aside, this is something that's a controversial subject to ways. It'll take some debate. Whether it's going to be passed by the 60% margin or not, who knows? but it came from a board, it's been clarified on what's going forward to the annual meeting. The motion has been made to approve its concept, but I do agree with Neil, you know, making it happen is the two different, if it comes up with an opportunity, it gives the VSBA a reason to support it.
Maybe it'll increase attendance at the annual meeting.
Mary Kay.
I agree with this sentiment, the board supported this sentiment, but I think that this type of a issue where there's really strong feelings on either side of the issue would be best left to the membership to decide without any recommendation from us. So I would propose that we not vote to recommend passage, but vote to take no position on it.
I would take another motion after.
Yep, I understand that. Just-
Floor?
We were one of the boards that passed that resolution and I think this supports other boards that have, it's not like we're gonna take any big action, it just shows support for your boards, and part of our policy is to keep students safe. So this is to the core of who we are in my mind. So I would, it's not like we are asking for more, you know, if there is more, we would support that, but we are supporting the people that is passing this laws right now.
We were also a district that the resolution ourselves on this topic had very conflicted folks in the audience. When they heard from our student, there was not another peep from the folks who were concerned about the notion that our board would take a resolution against gun violence. And I think that I will support this. And the question I have for Nicole is, do we have someplace else where we're speaking to, if further gun legislation comes up, you have guidance from the VSBA membership on what position to take?
I have no guidance, so this would allow for the VSBA to enter the debate in a way that we have not before. We have a resolution about schools gun safety zones or something. There was, it actually came from your district.
Because we had a neighbor
It
shooting
said that
guns.
neighbor close to a firing
No, it was just an
range or just
enthusiastic
an
neighbor.
enthusiastic neighbor that you can't fire guns within a certain feet of a school. But that's it, nothing about gun control.
Lou?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, this isn't necessarily, the way it's worded, isn't necessarily about gun safety. It is about controlling certain firearms. It's not even talking about all firearms. I mean, it's not, the way I read it, it's not about student safety at all. The sentiment is clearly about student safety, but the be it resolved part talks about banning certain types of firearms, and that seems like an odd position for us to be taking.
Could I have clarification on what you mean by that? When I read "be it resolved," I don't read that sentence. Oh, okay. It's further.
Yes.
Thank you.
Armor piercing bullets, automatic rifles.
I guess I have no problem, but
And
Yeah, does everybody see that on the back?
full
Yeah.
disclosure, I am one of those sportsmen. I own several firearms, and I completely support gun control, but that seems like an odd way to go about it as a school board association.
Dan, you haven't spoken on this yet, or have you?
I made the motion, but,
Yeah, and then you had your little speech. So I'm gonna make sure everybody's talked before we come back to you.
yeah.
All right, so Laura, we have a new one.
Having been pretty in-depth in this debate in the legislature, I really am looking at this and wondering, I mean, the actual words actually matter. And so, I'm a little concerned that it's vague. That it's vague and that it doesn't actually, I don't know. I'm not sure what the intent
I agree more.
what the intent is. If the intent, so there's pretty significant actions taken this year. And so it seems like it might be possible to be more specific, given that there were really significant actions taken this year. So it'd be hard for me, I think, to support this as it is. I like Mary Kate's idea of bringing it forward
With no position.
with no position. Or asking for even more clarification if, or more specificity.
The redraft was partially in response to a view that it was too specific to the board. And that the situation had totally changed. But, so it's, it's a hard thing to come up with the right drafting for, sure. I kind of like Mary Kate's suggestion.
So if you got new ideas, let's bring them up here. Let's not rehash things. Mary Kate, and then Dan, and then Kim.
I mean, this was pointed out to some extent, but, clearly that first sentence of the be it resolved, I think we're all on board for that. And it's really the second piece that, also may require, I think it's both too specific and not specific enough. And before recommending any of those, I think we would want to do research or have our staff do research on specific proposals that are set forth in the second paragraph.
Dan.
I just, having made the motion, I would like to urge this board to pass it. And I think one of the reasons why is, as Nicole said, she has no guidance at this point relative to gun safety. And I believe that it would be responsible on our part to say, this may not be perfect, we weren't crazy about every single word in it, but I would like for the VSBA to take some position on this board to take some position to take before the membership in the fall.
Kim.
I looked at that last paragraph. A question occurred to me is it necessary at all after that first sentence to include that specificity? The other piece that does, I think some of our legislators in Washington have stayed on the sidelines on this topic. And that paragraph, I think, speaks to recognizing the culture and acknowledging that there are some pieces of what's allowed currently that really are not sportsman items. So, I could probably go either way. I don't know if it waters it down too much to remove that paragraph entirely or suggest that as something that their board could resubmit and bring with them.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I think we're too late down. The wordsmithing thing can only happen at the annual meeting. We can't recommend a wordsmith here, so. Unless there's some burning issue here, we gotta move on, folks. Laura?
Just really quickly, I wonder if it's complicated by trying to speak to the Vermont legislature and the US Congress at the same time, right?
It's not. The revised version is not. It's speaking to just the US Congress.
No, it also.
Call on the Vermont legislature.
Mary Kate, something here?
You mentioned this in passing, but I think it is important that, once this is presented to the membership, we as well as other members can make modifications to this at that time. So it isn't necessarily the case that there would be no resolution on this. It could be amended.
From the floor.
From the floor.
I would also like to say that I think we're missing an opportunity if we don't bring this to the membership. I think it needs
Well,
to be.
the way the procedure works,
It's going.
this is going to the membership.
I see.
Does it
Regardless
go
of whether
with our recommendation or our recommendation to oppose?
Unless-
Or recommendation to make no recommendation?
Unless Taconic and Green withdraws it,
I see,
that it goes to the membership, no matter what we say.
I see.
That's true for any resolution submitted by a member of district board goes to the membership.
All right. Let's take a vote on this. The recommendation is we're voting on a motion to recommend that this pass, that we recommend it pass. So those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
I'm going to see a hand vote. Yes, please. So those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. 3, 4, 5, 6. I got 6. Those opposed, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Motion is defeated. Mary Kate?
I'll make a motion that we take no position.
We have a second. We have Mary Kay with a motion to take no position. We have Amy with a second. Any discussion on that? Seeing that, all those in favor of the recommendation that we take no position on this, please raise your hand. Not raise your hand, voice vote. Please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Yeah,
Any
I'm
abstention?
opposed. Yeah, I'm opposed.
Okay, 1 opposition. Any abstentions? All right. So we have no position on that one. Clarence?
15, Westminster educational taxes. Board recommends pass. The committee is requesting the Westminster Board consider deleting the last paragraph that states, taking these savings and redirecting the whole to VSBA requests the use of future reduced educational taxes statewide and not to fund new mandates and programs or funds of existing obligations that are not now paid from the educational fund. The committee had concerns that the VSBA could enforce and monitor this request, given the educational fund is comprised of a number of sources and uses. We recommend to pass it, and we recommended that they make that change and resubmit it. Did that change come in? It didn't, so this one stands as it was. They did not accept our recommendation.
We have a motion.
I'm unclear, just a point of order, so.
Go ahead, Mary Kay.
It does say we recommend pass, and my recollection was it was recommend pass if they made the language change.
Right.
Is that, can you,
That was kind of the thought, and they didn't.
so there is not a recommendation from the committee
Well,
to
the
pass
committee
without
recommendation
the
was to
language?
pass if they did it, they didn't do it, so it's kind of up to this board to decide what they want to do about this resolution. It's gonna go before the membership as it is, because they didn't choose to change as per the recommendation.
And I believe the issue, I was sat in on that meeting, I believe the issue was more the second paragraph, taking the savings and reductions as a whole, the SBA request they be used in the future to reduce educational taxes. I think that was the sticking point, if I remember right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we do not pass this.
So the motion to do not, recommend it do
Adrian.
not pass. Do we have a second on that from
I'll second.
Adrian? So we have Lucas with a second. Any discussion?
I made that motion because I think that, that last the last paragraph of be it resolved just does, it hamstrings everybody in how they react to funding in the state government. It doesn't seem like a reasonable request.
I think it doesn't seem like a reasonable request to conduct that that ongoing financial analysis and cost savings. That's another huge burden for our beloved Brad James.
Okay.
Any other thoughts? All right, I guess we're ready to go then. All those in favor of the motion to recommend that this do not pass, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed to that? Any abstentions?
I understand.
Two abstentions?
Who are they?
Lori and Dan.
Lori and Dan. Clarence?
Number 16, SU governance. This came from a complicated district, so it's a complicated resolution. They deleted a lot of information that we suggested, and then we said it would, I think we said they would pass this, if I remember right.
I think they have that.
Take no position.
Take no position. This one, I'll tell you what happened with this one. One of the committee members was sitting there and he says, well, all this information in the beginning that you're objected to is something I added to it for clarification. It's not what the board approved. Well, we said, take it out and it makes sense. So Gio took it out, resubmitted it to us.
You don't have to name names.
Well, we're gonna get there. And
It was referred to as junk, if I remember right.
so,
Thanks, Dan.
so it was,
Idea.
so then we could recommend that the passage of it with this information taken out. But it
There's a
was,
lot of specificity about the composition of the
Yeah.
specific
Why,
board involved and why.
so, there was a lot
Confusing.
going on.
Dan, you had your hand up.
I just want to say, I felt originally
Let's
that the
get a motion on the table
Okay.
first.
I will make a motion that we pass this.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion from Dan to pass, we got a second from Jim. All right, Dan.
And so my objection to begin with was it felt like VSBA was being asked to intercede in a specific situation which should have been handled at the SU, but all that language has been now removed from it. And whereas be it resolved is really what it comes down to, and I support that, the sentiment of that.
Jim?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to it, because when this came up, Geo's dealing with in their district with a situation where they essentially got turned down on what the SU board composition is. We had a very similar situation. We got approved very easily. So I think, that pointed out to me that, we had a problem where we had one district that was close to 70% of our SU, and they were gonna end up having about, 30 or 40% of the vote. And that was gonna actually probably kill our merger, frankly. So I think the rules, the basic old 3-in-1 rules, especially with Act 46, are, a little bit, they do need a relook. So, I was very supportive of, just being in the same situation and having a different outcome. That, to me, speaks volumes about it being something that needs to be considered.
Okay.
I think part of the problem is that if you're a minority, you don't have the votes to do what might, as the motion says, board composition that would be fair, equitable, and funding. And so what this asks is that the legislature look at that and create waivers so that the composition will be fair, equitable, and
to just give kind of a little view, in ours, we had one district was 70%, but we ended up making sure that frankly, all the other districts together could get their way. There are ways to solve it, but it's not easy to
right.
come up
And
with a
if the
solution.
minority, if the majority is like, well, forget you, screw you guys, then
Then that's not gonna
then
work.
it's not gonna work, so we're asking the legislature to take a look at that.
Any further,
Oh, just I only had one response from my board on all of the resolutions, and that was on this one, and it was a wholehearted support that they take a look and change the requirements. It's just too rigid.
any other, thank you, any other conversation about this? Kim?
Is there a law around it, like representation on SU?
Yeah.
But are they, I guess, how much time and energy do we envision? Is this just if something comes up versus you taking an active role in lobbying this versus being able to respond to it because this provides you guidance?
So I fully anticipate the agency is going to lead a process for a review of many provisions of Title 16 post Act 46 because frankly, a lot of pieces don't fit anymore. And so what I would see is this then has us bringing this issue to the table as part of that review.
Another minor piece of info is, the consultant on our merger that, helped us get our structure and all was Dan French, so. He's quite aware of the situation, so I've got some there.
We need to be moving on here, folks, we're starting to fall behind. Any other further discussion on this one? All those in favor of the motion that we recommend that this pass, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? One abstention from Lucas. Clarence?
17, Act 46, consolidation of debt. The recommendation of the committee was do not pass. the discussion at the committee level with this basically was where they were bringing debt into the merger, they forget about one piece. They're bringing the asset that they created with the debt that's coming to it. So if somebody doesn't have any debt, but they didn't keep their buildings up to date, now the new group has got to go into debt to pay for it. So there was another component that you ought to be thinking about. Debt in itself wasn't the only thing you needed to consider in these cases.
That doesn't support their position, so.
But that's why the committee recommended do not pass.
I'll make a motion to support the do not pass or to.
So
do not pass.
Jim makes a recommendation that this group recommends it do not pass.
Amy
Do we have a second? Amy McMullen on a second. Okay, now discussion. Any further discussion on this?
Well, I feel like I should speak to it since it's one of my districts, and it's been an issue that has consumed our merger, and there's a lot of valid points, and since we're going in front of the board on the 15th, I just gotta say that, it was not without a lack of trying. We have two very small schools, especially Doty, which would be affected disproportionately, and they see East Montpelier as bullying them into, taking some debt that we felt was necessary. So I just want to make that clear, that I do understand where this is coming from, and we have looked at ways to keep our, like as a district, we are willing to take on all the debt to make anything happen. So we hear them, they would have a huge tax burden for the amount of students that they have. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Dan?
I'm going to vote no, but I don't want to extend this conversation any longer. The only reason I'm going to vote no is because there may be situations where, in fact, the asset is not comparable to the debt, and so I'm going to vote no, but that's all I'm going to say.
Any other thoughts?
I think this could have easily come from the Danville School Board. They're being asked to merge with the Cadiz School District, which brings with it debt and more of a liability than an asset. So I think it's just important to know that there are places where it's not debt without, or that not all places that have debt have assets that are coming with it.
I think we discussed that, the whole financial picture is a lot more complex than just debt.
Yeah.
So just looking at debt is sort of missing the whole picture.
You can give us an example, Jim.
Oh, I gave an example of our district actually where, our nice little school, we had several schools that had a bunch of reserve funds sitting in their balance sheets, and, maybe they had some debt. We didn't have any debt, but frankly, we had some expensive projects in our building coming up, and we had essentially spent all our reserve funds. So you had a situation, the problem wasn't debt, the problem was we were kind of a poor relation, in the merger. Other people had debt, but, frankly, they were bringing a more positive financial, picture to our situation. So with ours, debt was certainly not, debt was a big part of the discussion, and when you had, individual, I went to every district, discussions, and there were a lot of people who brought up debt who were really focused on debt, but it wasn't the right answer. It was just easy, to focus on the debt.
It's when you merge into a new district, it's not us and them, it's all one district now. It's everybody saying, and you gotta stop thinking individually, we gotta think the new entity as a group. And that takes a little growth, and it's something called change in Vermont that does not come very easily.
Any other discussion on this? So the motion was to recommend it do not pass, if I can remember correctly. All those in favor of the recommendation to do not pass, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Dan?
Dan? Abstention?
I'm gonna abstain.
Flora?
I'm going to abstain too on this one.
Another abstention from Don. Okay, Clarence?
Last two, 18 and 19, are both VSBA. The committee came up with these resolutions to submit as a group. And the first one is on civil discourse. Recommend the adoption. It's fairly straightforward. Be it resolved, School Board Association encourage all educational stakeholders, one, to teach and model conflict resolution and consensus building as those skills are necessary for the health and well-being of tomorrow's society, and to engage in civil discourse as we set the course for future for our schools and communities.
Celeste?
Celeste, I move to pass.
Celeste moves to recommend that we pass. Mary Kay with the second.
Yeah.
Any discussion on this one? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? Pass it is. Clarence?
Number 19, public school employees' health benefit negotiations and ramifications. This is a resolution that deals with the newly passed law on the health insurance that we're all involved in, and all the dates are there on what's got to happen. This is just a resolution that gives guidance exactly how it's going to be warned, how the voting, how the approval's going to go. All this is just guidance on what's going on this new procedure.
And I believe why this is on there is so the membership can actually, this is the only way we can get the membership to be able to say, yeah, we like that, or no, we don't like it. So it's a little different from a lot of resolutions that we've passed before.
But clearly the stakes on this process are high, and so it's important that the membership approve the process by which this organization is going to fulfill its responsibility under the law.
So let's take, we have a recommendation to pass. No, we have no recommendation on this one. Lori? I'll take a motion first, and then we'll talk about the motion. Neil? You move that, you recommend that we pass?
Yeah.
Do we have a second on that?
I'll second.
We have a second from Celeste. Lori?
I'm wondering what would happen if the membership voted it down? I mean, this is law, right?
We would not, well, I would hope that they wouldn't vote it down. It's possible they would amend this process. The law does not require us to follow a specific, we have to develop our own processes for ratification of a final agreement and for appointing members to the commission. So the law says some criteria that have to be met, those three into the statutory requirements section, but this would add some additional criteria and just be very clear about the timelines for when appointments to the commission will be made.
Thank you.
Further discussion? It stays between us and dinner. All those in favor of the motion to recommend that this pass, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? All right,
I
so,
just point out one last thing is our resolution committee's report. The same thing's going to happen at the annual meeting. We're 10 minutes long on this. We're going to be long on the gun control one. That's where all the discussion was here tonight. Extended this discussion. So